Hey, how's it going, guys? This is Matt at Beard of Darkness Book Reviews, and I wanted to drop a little bit of a different video today. We're still going to have a review in it, and we're going to talk about a really cool fantasy book. But this is a special book, so I have a special story. Basically, when I was young, in my teens, I was diagnosed with something called Crohn's disease. It's an irritable bowel disease. It's really nasty, really eats your insides up, and it's a chronic illness. It doesn't go away. So, no pity, by the way. This is absolutely just part of my story in the book itself, and it has a lot to do with why I'm here, so I wanted to share that. I spent a lot of time in surgeries and laying in hospital beds for years and years. Adventures on my feet weren't happening. I wasn't going on vacations or going hiking or really doing much, but just kind of sitting there in my head, dealing with what I was going through at the time. No escape. It was just kind of a dark time for me. So, out of darkness, we often hear this, and it's hard to kind of believe when you're down, but there's a lot of light that comes from that. And that's what happened with this. One day I kind of just saw a book, and it looked really pretty, and got to reading the blurb, and it sounded really interesting. So I picked it up, bought it, let it sit on the shelf for a little bit, and finally I picked that bad boy up, and I haven't looked back since. It sparked my interest in reading, and not only that, it focused that passion on the fantasy genre, making this story part of the review, in my opinion, meaningful. Ordinary Monsters by J.M. Miro, and it is a beautiful cover. I got the hardback. It's a little dirty, but that kind of proves my point and kind of continues the story that I'm trying to tell. Through the hard times that I went through with my sickness, I didn't have a venture or a place to go mentally other than right then and there. And it became very hard to deal with. So after picking this book up, starting to read it, not giving it much thought, not giving it much of my hope, and it definitely surprised me. This is a historical fantasy. It takes place in 19th century London, and wow, it's very captivating. J.M. Miro, this is his debut novel, and this is part of a trilogy called The Talents. The second book comes out next year. There's quite a gap between this book, and it's called The Bringer of Dust. That's the second book that's going to come out in 2024. But I'm okay with that because, gosh, I really, really like this book. It not only got me back into reading, but fantasy itself. That is where my passion for fantasy started, was with this book. And the best way I like to describe it is it's a Harry Potter for adults. But the abilities that these children have that are actually sought out by kind of an organization, I would say. This is definitely what you'd call a dark academia. And when they're sought out, they are found because of their abilities. And when I say abilities, I mean sometimes plagued with these abilities, or some of these people heal automatically, even if they don't want to be. If they just kind of don't want to be here, they still heal and everything's okay. Other people have deformities as their ability, I guess you could call it, and obviously they're not very happy with that either. So you find yourself following two main characters. The first character is Charlie Ovid, and the other is Marlowe, and they're both sought out independently. They both have different backstories, which, by the way, are great. The characters in this book are in depth. So they all have backstories, and they have dedicated chapters just to those backstories, and you kind of do some foreshadowing about their pasts and their potential future. But they all have one goal, and it's to eliminate this monster, so to say. He's made of dust, and he's very hard to get away from. Along with the backstories, with all of the children you come to find in this book. You get their history, and you start to learn as they learn about the abilities that they have, because really it's always been a part of their life and they never understood it, and all of a sudden somebody is seeking them out and they're not quite sure how they know about them. This organization trying to help these kids, what they do is they go out, get the kids, and they bring them back to a academy, I guess you would call it. But the overtone to the whole novel is really enticing. It's captivating. It's a dark, in my mind, it's a dark Victorian Gothic feel. Obviously, it's going to be quite evident, maybe, that I'm going to rate this book 5 stars for sure. And you know, that has a lot to do with when I read this book in my life, and I always heard that, like, oh, this book can give a different opinion or be taken a whole different way or have a bigger or lesser impact depending on when you read it in your life and if you need that particular book. And I always kind of thought that was whatever, but that is 1000% true. This book gets 5 stars for me because it's imagination bringing to life characters, their history. You start to absolutely fall in love and care about these kids and what they're going through, empathize with most of the characters, and you also start to understand why they feel the way they feel based on their fears. But just his prose, J.M. Miro's prose is that of a very smart man. You can tell that he is a master at words. The storyline, the way that we get to go back and forth between the present and the past with each of these characters and the kids with the talents that you find in this book, the way he shifts back and forth from their story to the present, from their story to the present, back and forth, is not confusing. In fact, it sets it up in a way that you find by the end of the book, you can't wait to find out what happens. And even better, when it does end, you know that there's going to be a sequel, which of course I know this because I've done my research, but there's going to be a total of 3. It's going to be a trilogy. But they all end up with a common goal, and that's to help each other out as kids, and these people that are teaching them to cope with their abilities or how to really harness them and use them better than they thought they could or in a more effective way. They all share a common goal, and it's that to defeat the enemy in this book. Without spoiling anything, he controls dust, he's made of dust, and I honestly want to leave the rest to the reader, because it's fascinating and it's really, really cool. The positives are the in-depth characters. We've got great world building prior to getting to know the full story. As you read along, it's not hard to imagine what they're dealing with and what it looks like and how they feel, who they're around. And just the prose. J.M. Miro's prose has very striking qualities. When he says or he writes his words on this piece of paper, it just comes to life in my mind. And you know, a lot of authors do that, but others do it so well that it's like, man, it's just very impactful, and it leaves you kind of speechless. And there's a long wait for me or anybody else who loves this book that's read the first one and are waiting for the second one to come out, because I believe it's like 2-year wait. So I'm patiently waiting. The negatives in this book, well, it was hard for me to think of one just based on the nostalgia factor and how important it is and when I read this book in my life. So I try to be critical enough to find a negative with everything I read, because humans aren't perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect book, even if you think so in your mind. And I dug deep, and some of the backstories, with one particular character that I can think of, was a little bit too long, I think. Not by much, but if I had to pick a negative, that's it. One of the characters passed, and us learning of their history and what they've dealt with and where they did live before they came to the academy, that would be my negative. Just that it was a little too long. We could have maybe shortened it up a little bit. The other negative is the wait between book 1 and book 2. And that's it, guys, really. The wait's been killing me, but he could wait 10 years and I'd still be anxiously awaiting book number 2. The publication for Ordinary Monsters, the book I'm speaking of, was 2022, and The Bringer of Dust is coming out in 2024. So you've got a 2-year wait if you got it when I did it, or anybody else who got it when it first come out. So if you get it now, or soon, you're really not gonna be waiting that long. Lucky you. If you find yourself liking the content I make, if you like this video, I would love for you to subscribe and comment and like and all that fun stuff, because I'll have all my links down in the description. And I hope you guys come back for my next video. Thank you for watching. Stay imaginative.